Welcome to Let's Talk Property, an informal podcast show all about the UK property and mortgage market. I'm Neezam, and as always, joining me is my co-host Lee. Whether you're a seasoned property investor just starting to think about buying your house or your first home, this podcast is for you. We'll be discussing a range of topics, including the latest market trends, tips for finding the perfect property, and how to secure a mortgage deal. So join us as we explore the world of property and help you make informed decisions about your next property purchase. It must have been a while, Lee, because I was a bit rusty there.
It feels like it's been a little while. You did well.
Thanks. So today's topic is, let's jump into it. So it's a podcast more focused around the autumn statement, what announcements that we saw from a property side that affects home movers, first-time buyers, anyone potentially with a mortgage or owns a property or wants to get on the property ladder. So there was one big announcement. I guess just to hear your thoughts from the autumn statement, I'll put you on the spot here. Was there anything that you expected to hear that you didn't, or is there anything that you kind of thought you might hear, or anything that surprised you?
I think I'd probably like to have seen a bit more help for first-time buyers. I think what we're going to discuss shortly is fantastic in terms of what they do, but I think there's probably should have been maybe a little bit, in my opinion, should have been a little bit more help for supporting, in particular, first-time buyers, that just covering that gap or getting on the ladder. It could be like the ISA, sort of maybe improvements to the ISA or reforms or something similar to the Help to Buy scheme, in my opinion. I'm not saying the Help to Buy scheme is the solution, but something similar. Or maybe, I think there was lots of rumours about stamp duty, wasn't there? So maybe some stamp duty cuts or reform, some improvements on the stamp duty, so the tax you pay. So first-time buyers listening, the tax you pay on property purchases is good for first-time buyers. The limit's, I think it's 425,000, isn't it? So for first-time buyers, it's really good. But for people moving home, there's still quite a large cost there, and with property prices have risen and the thresholds are probably, I know they have been updated recently, but yeah, I was expecting a little bit more support from that front.
Yeah, and I think that's probably similar to me. So I think what I noticed in particular, I know with every budget or statement, there is always a lot of testing of let's leak this and see how it kind of lands. But yeah, I'll be honest, up until the night, even the morning of, actually, I was expecting to see stamp duty reform or cuts or at least some small change to it. Only reason being it was heavily rumored. And they've done it before, and that was a really short-term solution to boosting the property market after COVID. So I mean, I as you know, I had an interview lined up on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire that morning of the statement at something like, I think it was 7:10 in the morning. So I got up at silly o'clock, started prepping for what questions they were going to ask, and I focused everything on stamp duty cuts and stamp duty reform, expected to be asked about it, and they didn't ask me a single question on that. So they must have known more than we did. So I think I'm with you. It would have been nicer to see something more like groundbreaking or a bit more innovative, some kind of scheme that, and I don't know what the answer is in terms of how do you boost the property market, help first-time buyers, but also make sure property prices don't get out of hand and out of control. That's a fine line. So I'm not saying there's an easy solution, but it would have been nice for them to come up with something more, like you said, even if it was just kind of a look at the ISAs, the Help to Buy ISAs and things like that as well, or the not Help to Buy ISA, or maybe reintroducing the Help to Buy ISA or lifetime ISA changes or whatever it was. But hey, like you said, there was one thing that stood out for us, and we did contact all our clients to talk about it. But obviously, a lot of people here may not, or listening to this or watching this, may not be aware of the mortgage guarantee scheme. So one announcement that did affect home buyers is that the mortgage guarantee scheme, which was set to end at some point soon, I'm not sure the exact date, but it's now being extended until June 2025. So I don't think many people will have heard of the mortgage guarantee scheme. It's not like Help to Buy, where a lot of people talk about and hear about it. I don't know if you get that kind of feeling as well.
I completely agree. I don't think they do know. I don't think many people do know what the mortgage guarantee scheme is, and why it has been important, and what it does, what it enables banks to do. I think obviously we'll probably touch on that, but yeah, you're right. I don't think many people know about it.
No, and look, I'll hold my hands up. The mortgage guarantee scheme helped me get on the property ladder about 9 years ago. So let me give some background on it, and that was in its old kind of name of the Help to Buy mortgage guarantee scheme. This is just the mortgage guarantee scheme. They've dropped the Help to Buy side. So so this version of the scheme, it basically what it does firstly is it means that the government acts as a guarantor for you as the borrower for people that have a 5% deposit. So if you are buying, let's say you, for example, Lee, are buying a property of £100,000 and you've got 5% deposit, so you've got £5,000 to put down. The government will, in theory, act as a guarantor. I think it's for the remaining for another 15%. So that means the lender is only responsible, or they lend the 95% mortgage, but actually, if anything ever happened, you defaulted on your payments and you stopped paying your mortgage, and the lender will repossess your property, sell it. If they're short on what they sell it for against what you owe, then they can claim that difference back from the government. So it gives lenders, the idea is it's supposed to give lenders more confidence to lend at 95%, because without the scheme, there's quite a big risk to lenders. If property prices drop and you stop paying, they're probably not going to get all their money back if they have to step in, repossess and sell with all the fees and everything. So this version of the scheme was actually introduced, and I remember when it came out again, this version, it wasn't that long ago, in 2021, following the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was because at the time, we've probably sort of removed it from our memories because it was a horrible time, but actually there were almost no 95% mortgage deals in the market. I think there were a handful, and for a long while there weren't any. So the government introduced this back to in its new format, back into the industry to help boost property purchases for first-time buyers again, because otherwise they needed a 10% or 15% deposit, which for a lot of people is just too much. As a result, what we did find is more lenders then came back into offering at 95%. So it worked really, really well, in my opinion, at the time, and it was probably what was needed there as well. So how does this help you now? Is the next question that I wanted to kind of go through. So obviously, since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot has changed, in every sense, but also on the mortgage side as well, in terms of the mortgage market and banks and building societies. So, back at that point, lenders were really cautious. They didn't want to take risks. They didn't want to lend. And we were finding it really difficult to get a lot of mortgages approved, where in a normal everyday world, they would have gone through. So, now we're seeing lenders have a lot more confidence to lend. Again, as always, the doom and gloom of property prices are going to crash, property market's going to crash. We heard that so many times at the pandemic. Guess what? House prices are 18% higher now than they were at the start of the pandemic. So did that happen? No. And I think actually lenders have got a bit more confidence to say, we don't think they're probably correct for themselves and come down a bit, but they're not gonna crash sharply. So a few changes. House prices are obviously higher, but also mortgage rates have risen as well. Obviously in the last 18 months, probably a year now. So is this scheme making much difference to home buyers now? If you ask me, I don't think it's making a huge difference. And the reason I say that is from our experience, or from my experience of looking at the lenders we work with, which is most of the market, over 80 lenders. There are plenty of 95% mortgage deals available not using this scheme. So what that tells us is lenders are lending up to 95%, even if that mortgage guarantee scheme was there or wasn't there. So for me, is that actually making a huge difference? Is it, I think best case scenario, we might see a few other lenders come into that market. We might see some more competitive rates because there are more lenders. That's a good thing. So, I'll take that positive from it. But I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. But, it does make it a little bit easier for first-time buyers in particular to get on the property ladder with 5%.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway, isn't it? I think it's the biggest benefit to this, probably to people listening, first time buyers in particular, with 5% deposit, is it could add a little bit more competition and bring a few more banks in and give them a bit more
Yeah,
confidence to lend at that. It might also, obviously, we're in a lot of uncertain times. I think it might give banks a bit more security long term. If we are still in uncertain times, so it might just, if you're planning to aim for a 5% deposit, it might just mean that 5% deposit mortgages are going to be here till June 2025. It might just give a little bit more strength in that market. But I kind of agree with you. Banks are already lending at that level, and have been for a while, without the scheme. There's lots of banks, big banks and smaller banks as well, that are lending with a 5% deposit. So I think no huge shakes there. I think for me, like you say, I think the benefits there are probably the competition, and
yeah,
maybe it gives us a little bit more sort of security up till summer 2025, for 5% mortgages.
yeah. I completely agree. Cool. So actually, moving on to stamp duty, what we didn't see and what we expected to see, as we said, were stamp duty cuts or stamp duty reform or stamp duty holiday or something like that. Was it going to be the right solution? If they did, actually, I don't think it would have been. I think they made the right call on this because, yes, it would have been great for home movers and first time buyers already incentivized up to 425,000 anyway. They don't pay stamp duty. So first time buyers probably wouldn't have noticed it, the majority of them. It would have affected more home movers. And this is really interesting. So, there was no announcement. There was no change to stamp duty. I think the concern with it, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, is the stamp duty holiday that we saw previously. And if it was something similar to that, it brought so many buyers to the market, almost too many at a short space of time, because it was a stamp duty holiday with a deadline. Therefore, right, let's get in, because people were saving thousands of pounds, tens of thousands, by using that that holiday. That probably artificially helped bring house prices up to why they're 18% higher now than they were 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago. That is probably a massive contributing factor. But actually, what was the kind of benefit long term? Well, actually, we then saw everything drop off a cliff at the end of that deadline, because everyone was trying to complete before that deadline happened. So I think for me, the only thing I would like to see, or an interesting side of this, which I read recently, was there's an argument for stamp duty to be waived or reduced, or some kind of incentive for those that are maybe getting a bit older, older parents, children have left, they've grown up, they've left the house, and they're now kind of rattling around in these big houses, all their equities tied up in it. They might be looking at retirement, or they might already be retired, and they might just want to downsize. I've spoke to a client recently who wanted to move to be closer to a daughter who's just had a baby. So she wanted to move at the same time, downsize, because they didn't need the size of the house, and they just wanted to be closer to their daughter and their grandchild, which I think, so many people would want that. Now, if there was an incentive for them to do that by waiving stamp duty or reducing stamp duty, I think that will help free up those bigger properties for people that are currently still in their first homes and they're at the opposite side of the scale. So they're growing families, they're having, young children, they're outgrowing those houses. If they've got an incentive to move up to those houses, or there's more of them available for them to do that, that frees up more houses for first-time buyers. So I think for me, that would be a really good solution, because it's not just an open-ended, everyone gets no one pays stamp duty. I don't think they could do that. But actually, the solution behind it, I'm sure there are pros and cons to it. And what would it look like? I don't know. But it would be really interesting to see, actually, how do we incentivize those people to move down, free up those houses, so that then first-time buyers can come into the market with more choice. Usually will control prices as well, right? So if there's more stock, prices shouldn't shoot up, because actually it's going to be still kind of a buyer's market, really. So that's what I would like to see in the next announcement, but who knows? I don't think we can call it.
Yeah, difficult one, isn't it? I think that's definitely an area, and I think that was rumored and has definitely sort of been sort of spotlighted. I think you touched on it earlier, and you said something. We need to be a bit more innovative with what we're
Yeah,
doing in terms of, and I think that comes along with stamp duty. And I did see a rumor about green properties, having reduced stamp
yeah,
duty and things like. So we're not focusing on the whole market. We're not kind of pushing every home mover. We're focusing, and you sort of a little bit of a double whammy there. You're rewarding people who are doing up their homes and getting them green, because there's a big area where I think I read an article earlier when I was looking at podcasts, and England or UK is one of the worst for properties. It's got one of the oldest housing markets and one of the worst in terms of energy efficiency in Europe. So I think I
wow,
can't remember. So it's one of the worst. So that incentive could come quite well hand in hand. If we're rewarding people, or not rewarding people, I guess, incentivizing people for getting green properties, getting their property to a point where it's a C or a B or whatever, making them sort of greener. And when they come to sell, for the buyer, it's cheaper for them to buy the property because it's a greener property. And I did see rumors. I quite like that. I quite like that you're not focusing on the market. You're focusing on a big area. And I suppose it probably could, not that we need help, but I guess it could help new builds as well. Obviously, they're building the targets to build so many new build
yeah,
properties. That could help that area as well. So I think for me, it's things like that, being a bit more innovative in the way they're doing it. I know it can be a little bit complicated, but just focusing on the whole housing market and stamp duty holiday, that's not the answer. That's clear. That's not the
yeah,
answer anymore. That's, we're going to have the same as what we had a couple of years ago, and property prices are going to take a hit and escape further from first time buyers. Let's face it, property
yeah.
prices are only going to get further away. So I completely agree with what you said earlier. Innovative, I think, for me is what we need to see, something new and innovative.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we need that innovation in the in the market. And we also need to look at, you're right, we need to look at it more, we need to define it a bit better in terms of what outcomes do we want to see from what are we trying to achieve, rather than let's just throw this blanket stamp duty holiday everyone. What are the outcomes we want to see? Well, we want to see house prices not inflate too quickly but continue to rise. We want to see more support. We want to make it easier for first time buyers to get on the market, so that they're not having to always rely on bank and mum and dad, because so many people can't. So I think you're absolutely right. It's okay, what are the outcomes, and then work backwards. Okay, how do we create that? What does it need to look like? How do we incentivize them? And the green stuff, I agree with you. I think that'd be fantastic if there is something there to reward people to make their property more greener and improve the EPC rating. So how do you do that as well, and how do you kind of measure it? Would be really interesting to see. So I think there's probably going to be potentially, I think, talk of one more budget in April left on this government before the general election. So rabbit in a hat and all of that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
the vote winning budget, maybe.
Well, move aside Michael Gove, mate. You never know. We could both jump in.
I think we can aim higher than that. Fantastic. All right, cool. Well, should we wrap that up then?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you for joining us for an episode of Let's Talk Property. We hope you found the discussion of the UK property market informative and helpful. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to send us a message. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and follow us on social media for updates on future episodes. Until next time, we'll see you in the property market.